Hydrogen Power Study Task Force. We're going to get into the details of the resolution and kind of where we are in a second. But just at the top, let's call this meeting to order. It is January 10th, 2023. Welcome all of you to today's task force meeting. Just a reminder, if you're not talking, just go ahead and mute yourself. Feel free to use the chat if you want. We'll monitor the chat as well. As you can see, the meeting here is being recorded, and we will post it onto the hydrogen study website. All right, let's go to the next slide on the agenda. Lily, perfect. All right, so here's our agenda for today. We're gonna work through the meeting minutes of December. We've got Brian here who's going to provide us an overview of the legislative process coming up and what will happen when we submit this report. So feel free for all of you who are unfamiliar with that legislative process to ask questions and dig in a little bit. And then I'm going to spend a little bit of time working through the in-depth resolution. But what I'd like you all to begin thinking about is just, reflecting on what you all have been digging into, working on throughout this process. So I'll tee up a question as we get into the resolutions. And then we will hopefully wrap up the meeting with a vote on approving the report for submission to the Energy and Technology Committee. So I think a pretty straightforward meeting for today. Again, our last meeting of the Hydrogen Power Study Task Force. Okay, let's go to the approval of the meeting minutes. Let's go ahead. One more slide there. Oh, excuse me. Forgive me. Yes. Thank you, Sarah, for that reminder. All right, we're going to quickly do a roll call because this is our last meeting. So let me turn it to Sarah to do the roll call.
Great. So as Brian mentioned, we're going to be voting later, so it's important for us to know who's in the room. So we're going to start with the ex officios. Is Commissioner Dykes here today, or if not, who's representing DEEP this morning?
Hi everyone, Lydia Rupert. Yeah, I'm representing DEEP.
Morning, Lydia.
Good morning. Let me see if there's anybody else here. Yeah,
Good morning. I'm sorry I'm late.
Oh, that's great. Jeez.
Good morning, President Merrick. I have marked you present, President Merrick. Is Chair Gillette here? And if not, is there a different designee from PURA?
Good morning, everyone. This is Julia Dumaine here on behalf of Chair Gillette and PURA.
Thank you, Julia. Is Joel Reinbold here this morning?
I'm sorry, did you call Joel Reinbold?
I sure did.
Yes, I'm here, and with regrets, I have to jump at 11 o'clock. So I'll be here till a little before 11.
Thanks, Joel. And so now I'll go down the list of appointees just in the order that we have them listed later in the presentation. So is Enrique Bosch with us this morning?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Enrique Bosch presenting Avangrid.
Thank you. Sridhar Kanuri.
Hi, this is Sridhar. I'm here from Hyaxia.
Thank you. Shannon Lon.
Yes, good morning. This is Shannon Lon with Conservation Law Foundation.
Thank you, Shannon. Keith Brothers. Adolfo Rivera.
Yeah, I don't think Adolfo is attending today. He wasn't able.
How about Frank Reynolds?
Probably not. I don't think Frank is attending either. It'll be only from my side, from Avangrid side.
Great. Diganto Chatterjee. Kathy Ayers.
Kathy Ayers from Null Hydrogen.
Nikki Bruno.
Present from Eversource Gas. Thank you.
Samantha Danowski,
Yes, this is Sam Danowski from Sierra Club, Connecticut, present.
Tony Leo,
I'm here.
Jen Schilling, Weezy Noara, and Bill Smith.
Bill Smith here from Infinity Fuel Cell with Rick Mullins.
Great. Thank you all. I know that we have more folks on the line, but the names that I listed off are the official appointees and ex officio members. So, Strategy will be collecting the information about who all is here, but when we take a vote later, it will be those people whose names I called that will be responsible for voting. So thank you all.
All right, thank you. Thank you for doing the roll call. We'll track folks coming into the meeting. It may just be some folks coming in a little bit later, but we'll track that. Okay, so we've got the meeting minutes for December 13th, 2022, our meeting at High Axiom. Anybody want to move a resolution to approve the meeting minutes of December 13th? Anyone?
I move.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Great, thank you, Will. Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? All right, great. Thank you for that. Okay, so why don't we turn it over to Brian Farnan, our General Counsel and Chief Legal Officer, to work us through the legislative report process. Brian, let's turn it to you.
Sure, perfect. Next slide. So what I wanted to do here was just start off with kind of some of the basics. Not everyone's involved with Hartford or state politics. So at the highest level, everyone should know that the Connecticut General Assembly is now in session. This is what's referred to as a long session. So they went in on January 4th and they will adjourn at basically the beginning of the summer on June 7th. And the committee that really oversees the hydrogen task force in this study is the Energy and Technology Committee. It's co-chaired by Senator Norm Needleman and State Representative Jonathan Steinberg. Both have been great proponents of hydrogen and very much have been involved in this process. And we have a great open dialogue with both gentlemen as well as the ranking members. And this the start and what really sparked this task force was the former Energy Technology co-chair, David Arconti, who did not run for re-election. He was out of Danbury. And this was kind of, I think, something that he saw as part of his lasting legacy. So in many ways, we do thank him. And, at the end of the day, one of the end goals of the task force is submitting this report to the Energy and Technology Committee by January 15th with all of our findings and recommendations. And in essence, once we submit the findings and January 15 happens, then this task force in essence concludes and ends. Next slide. All right. So as many of you know, and probably been reached out by Brian and Sarah, there's been a wide distribution of these final products to both task force appointed members, ex officio members, and also just people that are in the industry that we've reached out and sought their feedback from. What we're going to do is we're going to work with Energy and Technology the committee to basically have what's called a concept concept committee bill be introduced. It's in many ways, it's almost like a shell vehicle that we could, set forth to potentially carry the task force recommendations. Once we get to this next stage and provide our findings. What we'll offer to do is we'll, offer to do an informational forum, where we could go in front of the Energy and Technology Committee members. It would be open up to the public, and we would do, potentially a joint presentation by Stratogen, who, I cannot thank any much more for the great work they've done in the Green Bank, and then also kind of the heads of the working groups to kind of give that opportunity to report the findings, and then also take questions from Energy and Technology Committee members. And I think the goal of that would be to kind of spark legislation and kind of, in further kind of development of, our policy on hydrogen and making Connecticut a leader in this space. So, this is, at the end of the day, our goal is, get a consensus decision on the findings of the task force, submit those findings and recommendations, and with some of the things where you get to agreement, where there's kind of differing point of views, and present all that information to the E&T committee members. And then at some point, the political process then begins, and all those involved in the process would be obviously welcome to continue to participate. I'm sure if we have a informational forum, even though this task force would officially have been concluded, we would update everyone and let everyone know of such events, give them an opportunity to attend. And that's kind of where we are. So really excited as we're in this early stages of the legislative process to kind of get the task force over to the E&T committee members, so then they can then take it from there.
Great. Good. Thank you for that. So any questions, comments just on some of the legislative items? We're going to dig a little bit, obviously, more into the work today, but Brian, it was great to provide that overview for us, just to give us a sense of what's coming ahead. Any questions, comments? Feel free to raise your hand or just jump on in.
And I'll take any lack of questions. That my summary was so thorough. Perfect.
There you go. All right. Well, we if you have questions, feel free to either chat them through or raise your hand as we move along. But Brian, thank you for that update. Okay, so why don't we keep going here? So now what I wanted to do was to review and discuss the task force resolution. So one of the documents that was shared last week was the draft resolution for today that the task force would be taking up. So if we could actually go to the next slide there, that would be great, Lily. Perfect. Thank you. So as we get ready to discuss that final resolution of our hydrogen power study task force, Sarah, myself, and the Stratogen team, we thought it would be important that we have each member of the task force reflect on what transpired over the last 6 months. So this is kind of a heads up, get ready sort of point. This process has resulted in a robust and first of its kind 130-page report that we're going to be delivering to the Energy and Technology Committee of the Connecticut General Assembly. Yep. The findings and recommendations of this report are going to provide a model for other states as well as they work to advance their hydrogen efforts and continue Connecticut's path on leadership in the hydrogen and fuel cell space. Following an overview of the resolution, which I'm going to do right now, we'll request that each task force member provide a reflection on their contribution to the process, as well as the findings and recommendations reflected in the final report. So get ready. Just to give you a heads up, here are the first 3 task force members I'll call on once we finish the overview of the resolution. So we got Tony Leo from Fuel Cell Energy, Lydia Rupert from DEEP, representing Commissioner Dykes, and President Merrick, if we can have you as well. All right, so let's go to the next slide on the first whereas in the resolutions. And again, just referring over to that resolutions document. So we've got, whereas on a nearly unanimous bipartisan basis, the Connecticut General Assembly passed and Governor Lamont signed on May 23rd, 2022, Special Act 22-8, an act establishing a task force to study hydrogen power. I wanted to really start off by recognizing the longstanding Energy and Technology Committee tradition of bipartisanship. One of the things that I've observed over several decades is that this committee really works hard to aspire towards bills coming out on a bipartisan basis. Lonnie Reed, who was formerly a co-chair of the Energy and Technology Committee, she's now the chair of the Connecticut Green Bank. She used to always say that we strive as a committee to be bipartisan, and she meant it. And I think that tradition stands to today. When a bill moves out of the Energy and Technology Committee and through roll call votes in the House and Senate, again, they're usually bipartisan, as evidenced by this special act. So of the 144 voting members in the House, 142 of them voted yay on April 20th, 2022. Of the 35 voting members in the Senate, 35 of them voted yay on May 3rd, 2022. So although Special Act 22-8 was not unanimously bipartisan because of 2 nay votes, 177 yays out of 179 voting is incredibly bipartisan, and again, indicative of that bipartisanship between members of the Energy and Technology Committee. And of course, the 89th governor of the state of Connecticut, who was inaugurated last week in a celebration. It was really cool to be there with many of you. Governor Ned Lamont signed the bill on May 23rd, 2022. And then we all know that on March 24th of 2022, Connecticut joined New York in a regional clean hydrogen hub proposal. And in that press release, Governor Lamont said, Connecticut has long been a leader in addressing the climate crisis and in researching and developing innovative technologies. And this exciting partnership unites both of those key leadership areas. We're proud to share a commitment to climate leadership, fuel cell innovation, and clean energy jobs with our neighboring states, which will position us competitively to bring federal investment in the clean hydrogen to our region. So that's the first whereas within the resolution document. Let's go to the next slide there, Lily. All right. So on this whereas, the act requires appointments of 16 members and 5 ex officio designations to the task force within 30 days of its signing, of which all appointments and ex officio designations were eventually filled except 2 appointments. So as someone who's had to support the coordination of leaders from the Connecticut General Assembly in appointing members over the last decade to our board of directors, for example, I knew that this was going to be the most challenging aspect of the statute. Although we didn't get all 16 members appointed, we did get 14 of them within a 90-day period following the signing of the bill. I want to acknowledge each of you and your respective teams for your contributions to this process, and I can't express that appreciation enough. You all have day jobs, and your appointment and your time and service to this task force has been incredible. I know she's not here perhaps yet, but Mary Wiese-Nwara was among the first appointments to the task force representing nuclear power. The electric and gas utilities over time, we had our utility task force members appointed. Eversource, Diganto Chatterjee was the first appointment from Eversource, followed by Nikki Bruno and Jennifer Schilling. I can actually remember that first meeting back in July of last year when Diganto asked if we were going to produce supply and demand curves through the work of the task force. And I remember looking left and right, looking at Aaron and saying, are we going to do that? And I think we ended up doing that in the workforce. So thank you, Eversource team. Avangrid, Frank Reynolds was the first appointment from Avangrid. And then the rest of his team, including Enrique Bosch and Adolfo Rivera, joined the task force on behalf of Avangrid. Frank had actually been appointed for that first meeting, and he attended it, except that his appointment letter was never sent to me, so I had no idea. That's pretty typical. That happens a lot. People get appointed, but you don't know until they show up at your meetings. But thank you, Avangrid, for your support of the process. On the hydrogen and fuel cell industry, Kathy Ayers from Nel Hydrogen and William Smith from Infinity Fuel Cells were the first two industry appointments to the task force. They attended our first meeting, followed by Tony Leo from Fuel Cell Energy and Sridhar Kunari from Hyaxium. In the end, we were short one appointee from the Connecticut Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Coalition. Our environmental groups and renewable energy advocates took some time to get our appointees on board, with Samantha Dynowski from Sierra Club joining in August and advocating for more representation. Thank you for that consistent advocacy for more representation. We eventually got Shannon Lawn from the Conservation Law Foundation. Thank you both of you for your contributions to this process. In the end, we were short one appointee from the Renewable Energy Advocates. So between the Connecticut Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Coalition and the Renewable Energy Advocates, those were the two that we were missing of the 16 appointees. And then labor, I think Keith Brothers from the AFL-CIO was our final appointment representing labor. And he dug in certainly into the workforce development during the process. So I want to thank all of you for your effort, your support in this process. You know, it was accelerated and condensed. We had a lot of work to do. Your contributions, and in some cases that of your staff. I'm looking at you, Kirk, sitting right there next to William. Like, I know it's really, really important that we surround ourselves with people to support us. So just wanted to thank all of you appointees to this process. Let's go to the next slide on the ex officios, Lily. And the ex officios, each of you, so Commissioner Dyke's team with her support team, Lydia Rupert's with us here today, Becca Treach, Eric Annis. I'm sure there are others. And if there are others that we're missing, please chat them through. We want to capture them and acknowledge them in the report. So if we're missing people, chat them through to us. It's really, really important. Chair Gillette of the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority and her support team. I heard Julia early, Julia Demain. I think I saw Taryn O'Connor on. So thank you to the PURA team. UConn President Radenka Merrick and her support team. President Merrick, great to see you. Professor Ur Pasio-Galati, I see Ur there, and Barbara Fernandez, great support team. And then last, but certainly not least, Joel Reinbold of the Connecticut Center for Advanced Technologies. And then, of course, we've got Sarah Harari right here, my co-chair, right to the right side of me here. You continue to be an inspiration to me, Sarah. Thank you for being right there throughout this process. Really intense and, just made it all the more worth it. And thank you for the support. I'm sure I may have missed somebody in that. So again, chat their names through. We want to capture them, Aaron, for that report. Make sure we're acknowledging everybody. We're all supported in our jobs by many wonderful people that we surround ourselves with. So again, thank you all for being a part of this hydrogen task force. Let's go to the third whereas in the resolution, the next slide. All right. Whereas the act designates the president of the Connecticut Green Bank as the chairperson and requires the chairperson to schedule and hold the first meeting of the task force within 60 days of its signing, which took place on July 12th, 2022. So we had 6 months to do what we did. We were talking about it a little bit earlier. It was probably for like 4 months. It took us 2 months to get organized and 4 months to dig in. But beyond assembling and organizing ourselves and the quick planning and resourcing, we had to get going. We had 60 days from the signing of the bill to hold our first meeting. We held our first meeting 51 days after the signing of the bill. You may recall that one of the first things I disclosed in that first meeting was my bias towards fuel cells and green hydrogen. In fact, I was in, and you could see it here on the screen, the Dr. Bernard Baker Green Hydrogen Conference Room here at the offices of the Connecticut Green Bank. You can see the wind and the solar there, Kathy electrolyzing that water whose hydrogen goes into a fuel cell. Now today, Brian, Sarah, and myself are in the Mary and Eliza Freeman Conference Room, which reflects upon the importance of environmental justice in our state. So we start with the Green Hydrogen Room. We're going to end with community engagement. Probably feels very appropriate to our recommendations within today's resolution. We were fortunate when we had our first meeting back then to have two of the leading members of the Energy and Technology Committee in Representative David Arconti and Senator Paul Formica join us and give a charge to the task force. They have just both recently ended their service as political representatives. And on behalf of all of us, I want to thank them for their service to the Constitution State and leadership within the Energy and Technology Committee. I did have a chance over the weekend to review their remarks in that first meeting, and I think we fulfilled their ambition for the study. Let's go to the next resolution, whereas number 4. Whereas the act requires the task force to submit a report to the Energy and Technology Committee by January 15th, 2023 to study hydrogen-fueled energy in the state's economy and energy infrastructure, including its findings and recommendations in the following 7 areas. So we see several key pieces here, including the 3 Ds deadline. January 15th, 2023, almost exactly 6 months since our first launch meeting on July 12th. You see the deliverable, the report to the Energy and Technology Committee, and you see the direction, the findings and recommendations in 7 areas. We had to take this direction to organize and resource ourselves in order to execute on a plan to get us here today. Let's go to the next slide, whereas number 5. Great. In addition to the areas identified within the act, the task force also included infrastructure, transportation and storage, as well as environmental justice and just transition within the areas of study. So the statute actually gave us some flexibility to address additional areas. And while we may not have addressed all of these additional areas that we felt were important, we certainly addressed significant components of it, including infrastructure. How are we thinking about getting hydrogen from the source of production to the end use within the economy? That requires infrastructure. And while infrastructure was not among the areas the Special Act directed us to study, we saw through the process how important it is, yet challenging and difficult in terms of thinking about pipelines, transportation, and storage. This is not easy, as it raises a lot of environmental justice issues. Secondly, environmental justice, also not an area within the Special Act, but given Connecticut's commitment to environmental justice communities, whether that's the General Statutes 22A-20A, whether that's Public Act 20-05 addressing vulnerable communities, executive orders, it's really, really important. And a future where the green economy can lift everyone up. Our vision here at the Connecticut Green Bank is a planet protected by the love of humanity. So recognizing we need to confront climate by lifting up our communities, especially our most vulnerable. We had to ensure that we were addressing environmental justice in this process. So we brought in the efforts of Bridgeport to help us learn more about what they're working on within the DOE's hallmark environmental justice program, the Communities Leap, to help us think more about the importance of community engagement and community benefit, which then led us to our third area of just transition. As we look ahead at competing for federal resources, Connecticut actually now has a public policy competitive advantage, and that's in Public Act 21-43, an act concerning a just transition to climate protective energy production and community investment. If hydrogen were to be included within the provisions of that policy, then community benefit agreements would be required to ensure environmental justice and just transition as we build the green hydrogen economy. So again, while I'm sure there are other areas we could have addressed beyond the statutory 7 and the additional 3, I believe we got the main issues to study out on the table, given the time and resources that we all had to do this. Let's go to number 6 under the whereas in the resolution. Great. Whereas to support the task force, the Green Bank issued a competitive RFP to identify a facilitator and technical assistance provider, resulting in the contracting of Stratagen Consulting. Once the bill was passed, we had to move quickly to resource it. I've never been a part of a more comprehensive and accelerated process to identify a facilitator and coordinator for a process than what led to Stratagen. We issued an RFP the Friday after the Monday Governor Lamont signed the bill. So on May 27th that week, we issued the RFP. We assembled our state ex officio colleagues to help us through that process, Deep, Pura, and Yukon. We received 5 of what I think are the best proposals that I've ever seen from a facilitator coordinator process. They were really incredible proposals to facilitate this process. And the bullets that you see here formed the scope of work. And we all saw the execution on that. I mean, just seeing these 3 bullets, it's like, oh my gosh, Stratagen was so much more. Aaron, I want to thank you and the Stratagen team for supporting Connecticut and this task force through this process. Lily Backer, Colin Smith, Joe Goodenberry, Jennifer Gorman, Nina Habel, Joe Walderman, Jordan Ahern, Elias Animas, and Hope Bashing. Thank you all for your diligence, research, analysis, facilitation, coordination, and so much more. Sarah and I, and the task force, we couldn't have done it without you and your support. Thank you very much. Let's go to the next slide. Number 7. Whereas to support the task force in its efforts to delve further into the specific area of analysis, 5 working groups were established and co-chaired by industry experts. In our planning, we knew that we needed to share the leadership through working groups. So we set them up to address the statutory and additional areas we needed to delve into. Thank you to all of our co-chairs and their support teams. Specifically, I wanted to give a shout out to DECD Commissioner Alexandra Dom and her team, Benu Chandi and Carmen Molina Rios, who jumped right in and engaged. If there's one thing the special act missed, it was designating DECD as an ex officio member of this task force. When we think about green hydrogen future here in Connecticut, the economic development implications are vitally important, especially for Connecticut, given our manufacturing and technology innovation leadership we have, something that every state across this country wants and is competing for. Let's go to the next slide, number 8. All right. Whereas to support the open and transparent process of the task force, the Green Bank and Stratagen established a regular meeting schedule of the task force and working groups, including but not limited to listing meeting agendas on the Secretary of State public meeting calendar. Green Bank has to do that all the time. A Green Bank dedicated hydrogen webpage, recording and posting meetings with CTN. It was great that CTN was right there with us throughout this process. Posting meeting minutes and materials, including some of them translated in Spanish, promoting meetings through various channels for public engagement, and hosting public listening session and providing opportunity for written public comment. This is absolutely new to us, this type of public engagement. Designing, developing, and implementing a public engagement process is very foreign to the Green Bank. We tried our best to watch and observe what DEEP and Pura do very well and support this task force, its working groups, and public voices to engage. And another big thanks to Stratagen for helping us navigate all of this. The Green Bank, what we do is we provide families and businesses with the capital they need to finance clean energy improvements for their homes and businesses. We don't lead public policy task forces. So I hope that we've lived up to your expectations with this process. We did our best to try to do that. Let's go to the next whereas, number 9. Whereas with the objective to engage the task force, working groups, and other stakeholders, the Green Bank and Strategen hosted 7 task force and 20 working group meetings open to the public online as well as in person at various hydrogen and fuel cell locations across the state. So despite the challenges that we're still experiencing with COVID and getting people together in person to engage, we wanted to add in an element into this process that would allow participants to experience the incredible industry we have here in Connecticut, truly positioning us for the future green hydrogen economy. So we started off at the University of Connecticut's Innovation Partnership Building in August. What an incredible space for research and development and seeing the next generation of entrepreneurs and scientists. We, Connecticut, most likely have the only public supported university president in the country whose research is hydrogen and fuel cells in President Radenka Merrick. Thank you, Radenka, Uwer, and Barbara for your hospitality. Go Huskies. Nell Hydrogen, we then brought the task force to Nell Hydrogen in Wallingford in September. Who knew that a global leading electrolysis researcher and manufacturer of hydrogen production equipment is here in Connecticut? And who knew that they were already working on hydrogen production projects for a Spanish energy company in Iberdrola that is the parent company of Avangrid here in Connecticut? Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Chris. I see you on there for hosting us at Nell Hydrogen. Fuel Cell Energy. We moved from hydrogen production manufacturing to molten carbonate fuel cell manufacturing at Fuel Cell Energy in Torrington in October. We've worked with FCE for a long time, including helping finance the largest fuel cell in the US at the time, a fuel cell manufactured in Connecticut on a former remediated brownfield in a distressed environmental justice community of Bridgeport. It was incredible to walk through the manufacturing plant of FCE and hear that over 90% of their production is exported into global markets. And secondly, that their equipment is likely to meet the domestic content requirement under the Inflation Reduction Act. So thank you, Tony and Alex, for hosting us at Fuel Cell Energy. The Millstone power plant, from electrolysis of fuel cells to a green hydrogen source in Millstone Power Plant in Waterford in November. What an incredible zero carbon baseload energy resource we have here in Connecticut with Dominion Energy. It was an incredible tour that had just recently been given to DOE Secretary Granholm. A big shout out to Wheezy for hosting us at Millstone and giving what I thought was one of the best presentations I've ever heard on the regional energy system. And lastly, certainly not least, Hyaxium. We visited the phosphoric acid fuel cell manufacturing plant of Hyaxium in South Windsor in December. I think when we started this task force process, Sridhar, I believe you may have still been Doosan, but were recently renamed Hyaxium. We had another incredible tour of a fuel cell manufacturing plant whose equipment also is sold in international markets. So thank you, Sridhar, for hosting us at Hyaxium. Every state focused on clean energy, manufacturing, hydrogen, and fuel cells wants what Connecticut has. So thank you to all of you who hosted us throughout this process. Let's go to our final whereas in the resolution. The next slide. All right, and lastly, whereas the objective to educate the task force working groups and other stakeholders, the Green Bank and Strategen included hydrogen and fuel cell experts from the Lawrence Berkeley National Labs, Sandia National Labs, and environmental justice and just transition professionals within the process. We brought science and equity learning into the process. Green Hydrogen 101 to 301 from the Green Hydrogen Coalition and our national labs in Sandia and Lawrence Berkeley, to environmental justice and just transition from the Clean Air Task Force, Greater Bridgeport Community Enterprises, and the Connecticut Roundtable on Climate and Jobs. We're all learning about hydrogen, green hydrogen, and the important role it will have in confronting climate change. So those are our 10 whereases within the resolution that you'll be voting on today. So now let's turn our attention to the 5 resolved within the resolutions. Let's go to the next slide. And just getting you all prepared for your reflections. So after I work through these 5 resolves, we'll turn it back to you. So here are the 5 pieces of the resolution. The first 3 really have to do with our obligations within the special act. And then the final 2 are what we're going to act on to help support those 3 items. So the first, resolved that the task force on January 10th, 2023 approves the final study reasonably reflects the findings as identified, analyzed, and deliberated within the process and the diversity of stakeholder perspectives on the findings. The second, resolved that the task force on January 10th, 2023 approves the final study reasonably reflects the recommendations as identified, analyzed, and provided by the working groups and deliberated by the task force within the process and the diversity of stakeholder perspectives on the recommendations. And resolved that the Green Bank shall submit the final study to the Energy and Technology Committee on January 15th, 2023, whereby the task force shall simultaneously terminate its duties per the act. Resolved that the Green Bank, in its role as chairperson of the task force, respectfully requests that the Energy and Technology Committee introduce a committee bill for debate called Hydrogen-Fueled Energy in Connecticut's Economy and Energy Infrastructure within the 2023 legislative session to address the legislative recommendations included in the task force report submitted by the Green Bank. And lastly, resolve that the members of the task force and Stratagen will make themselves available as appropriate for hearings of the Energy and Technology Committee with respect to the proposed committee bill within the 2023 legislative session and request to make a formal presentation to the Energy and Technology Committee led by Stratagen and supported by the Green Bank regarding the findings and recommendations of the task force. All right, so thank you for giving me that time to kind of work us all through where we were, what we've done, and what we're recommending going forward through the study. Now I want to turn it back to you. So why don't we go to the next slide here, Lily, and we're going to just do some reflections. Given this intense effort of the task force and working groups over this past 6 months, we wanted to give an opportunity for some closing reflections from all of you. So if we could ask for you to reflect on your contributions to this process, your team's contributions to this process, as well as the findings and recommendations as reflected in the report. And we'd also love to hear about how this process was able to acknowledge and incorporate unique perspectives of such a diverse set of participants as you all are. I think I teed you all up. Tony, I don't know if you're there, if you want to get us off and going, but it would be great if you started us off.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm having some Wi-Fi issues, so I'm both on my phone and on the computer. Hopefully this works. But yeah, it's been a good process. A lot of different voices, as is the only way it could possibly be. The report, I think, does a good job of providing a summary of all those different perspectives, and obviously it can't pick from among them in those times when there were differences. But I think it does a really good job of framing the opportunity for hydrogen in the state. The technical information presented in terms of the technical potential for hydrogen production and the potential hydrogen demand is really good background. I have a feeling, it feels like this is just a start of a process, even though we're at the end of this particular process. So it was great being a part of it.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Tony. Just the start. There we go. I wrote that one down. Deep, Lydia.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, it is. It is. We also have the same feeling that this is just the starting point of all the work around hydrogen that we have to do here. First, I want just to take the opportunity, and I want to take the opportunity of being part, in the name of DEEP, the opportunity of being part of this process, and also thank everyone that has engaged with it, and a big thank you to the Green Bank and the Strategy team for all the work done with that. So this process was definitely a great complement to our policy process around hydrogen, which, as all of you know, it is in the early stages. We are developing a white paper on hydrogen at the moment, which one of the goals is to set a clean hydrogen definition that is suitable for Connecticut. And we anticipate to provide public comments opportunities in the end of January regarding this white paper. The white paper will be part of our comprehensive energy strategy process. We also anticipate having a couple of public meetings, public technical meetings throughout 2023. And we will continue to learn, investigate, research, and define the best ways to develop and deploy hydrogen in Connecticut in a way that is clean, affordable, it's equitable, and that can provide the best outcomes to the people of Connecticut. And definitely all the recommendations, the resolutions and recommendations of the task force are very welcomed. And they are already being incorporated into our research and policy process that we are undertaking right now. And we look forward to continue the engagement with all the stakeholders throughout this process to better develop and deploy hydrogen.
Thank you, Lydia, for that. We're looking forward to helping you continue on this. Great to hear all the progress
And we
there.
really appreciate that. We really appreciate that.
Love it. And so we're going to go to UConn, but just teeing up, Kathy Ayers and Enrique Bosch will follow. But President Merrick, anything from you or Uwer or Barbara you want to say from UConn?
Yeah, I would like first to thank Barbara and all for participating on the task, and all participants, amazing job. A lot more to come, as we are all agreeing, this is just beginning. And Brand, thank you for your endless support. And you had been calling all of us, you had been checking, validating. So I don't know more curious and harder working person than you. So excellent presentation from you and your team. I want to bring something that we think about, that the countries that have not traditionally traded energy are establishing bilateral energy relationships around the hydrogen. So I want to bring the notion of the hydrogen economy, and the cross-border hydrogen trade is set to grow considerably, with over 30 countries and regions planning for actively commercialize hydrogen today. And when I talk to Governor, he always asks, is this 20 or 30 years from now? So when we go to floor to testify, we have to talk about the readiness of technology, and we have to talk about the new order in the world and more equitable world. And if you think where was the power with fossil fuels, think of the new order and what can happen with the hydrogen economy. Many of you I met before coming to UConn. I knew Ur, I knew Joel, I know many during the DOE meetings at other stages in the world, but climate change is truly a global issue. Politics are local, and this gives us a great opportunity as a Connecticut to be leader in the new economy and creation of the high value jobs. And I want to emphasize why for any country to grow is important to bring high value jobs. Another thing that is important is to educate public. And we have to spend a lot of time from the households, from the communities, from the schools, from the churches, any places where people are gathering to educate what is the climate change, why that matters, and how that is going to influence the life of our children and grandchildren. So education is truly the power, and we will not move without educating the public. And we have to use scientific evidences to present climate change and why hydrogen is a solution. Thank you.
Fantastic. That was great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Kathy.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that the whole process was really interesting to be a part of, and the report represents a huge, huge amount of work. As a couple of other speakers have said, amongst a very diverse group of opinions, I will say our working group had a lot of very blunt and outspoken people, which is great. I don't think we were shy at all about writing our feedback. And I think, Colin and others did a good job of trying to incorporate that feedback back into the report and the various kind of call outs that were put in there. I think that the company call outs and the highlights of the various organizations in Connecticut were a really good addition. I also echo Radenka's statement. I think time is of the essence, and while this is a great start, we still have a lot of work to do. And I'm also glad that the scope has kind of morphed a bit from just how do we deploy hydrogen in the state to how does Connecticut also become a central manufacturing entity of the equipment that needs to support this economy.
Excellent. Thank you, Kathy. So we've got Enrique followed by Sridhar and Joel. Enrique.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. And apologies, but I'm going through a security checkpoint in the airport, so I had to be brief here. So, well, first to thank the Green Bank and Introgen for leading the effort and being part of this. The whole process has been experienced. I think it was very interesting. I like the way the sessions were structured, the different work groups from policy, from infrastructure, from end use. I think that's the right way to work. I also appreciate the report. I think it's very extensive with a lot of detail. I really enjoy, looking at all the data, all the different strategies, all the different outlooks that we have put in there. So I think it's a really good document. Hopefully it's going to be like a guidance to continue with more work. And I agree with all that we are saying. So this should have some continuity. I agree also with the new order of hydrogen, as President Marek was saying that. So there's going to be a new economy coming, and I think we need to move fast and we need to take action to really put Connecticut in a good space to develop new jobs and develop economy. So from our side, it was a great experience. So happy to collaborate and to keep working with you guys with these efforts. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Enrique. Safe travels. So we've got Sridhar, Joel Reinbold, and then Samantha. Sridhar.
Hi, Brian, and the team. This process I thought was really, really good, where it involved a variety of groups, a variety of opinions, and the culmination of this report has been a very good process. One of the things that I liked was actually being able to visit the facilities and see the capabilities around the state, and then building on that for drawing the roadmap that is being presented. That I thought was a great initiative, where we understand what we have and how we can build on this to drive the economy of the state forward. And another thing that I really liked, which at least in one of my previous interactions where I didn't see happening, was workforce development and actually focusing on that, creating ideas, getting input on how we improve the state's workforce to be able to deal with the hydrogen economy. So overall, there were a lot of great pieces, like everyone has said, which I think culminated in a good report. So I think, as Tony said, this is the start of the process where we provide recommendations and then use this to mature the hydrogen economy in the state.
Thank you for that, Sridhar. Joel. We may have lost Joel. I think we lost Joel. Samantha, William Smith, and Shannon. Samantha?
Thanks, Brian. Hi, everyone. Sam Danowski from Sierra Club. Just reflecting on this very, feels like lightning fast process. Want to recognize the good work that Stratagen did in really, having a well-planned process, scheduling our regular meetings, doing so much of the legwork. I think Stratagen really did an excellent job in that. Coming into the process, I feel like, the legislature set up a task force that's largely around the economics of hydrogen. And I think we answered a lot of questions about the hydrogen economy, but and we're happy that the legislature in the end did add environmental voices here, but I feel like the process itself that the legislature tasked us with did not include answering some of the key questions about our greenhouse gas reduction goals and how hydrogen and the definition of clean hydrogen and how hydrogen should be used. So I'm really glad to hear that DEEP is continuing this process with a white paper, and that there'll be, that will add on to the process that we had here and the really critical questions that have to be answered. And I think the report reflects how cautiously we need to move and look at those key questions as well as the ones that the legislature asked. So I think we're just at the beginning of what I expect to be a long conversation in Connecticut about where to go from here. So thank you. Look forward to continuing this and answering those key questions about the definition of clean energy and about the costs to ratepayers.
Excellent. Thank you, Sam. William Smith.
Hi, I have to say I was very impressed by the overall process. I was impressed by the leadership of Green Bank and by Stratagen. And I appreciate the opportunity through the appointment for Infinity to be a contributor to the process. And my colleague Rick Mullins has been intimately involved in this as well. And I have to say, as a co-founder of Proton about 26 years ago and founder of Infinity Fuel Cell and Hydrogen, I've been involved in a lot of studies and advocacy of hydrogen energy over the years. And I think this is the best. You have a quality product that's coming out of this process and done it on a very tight timeline, and it met all of the required deadlines. So I'm very impressed with the process. And it's extremely important, the end of this process, recommending the legislation and seeing that legislation can actually be implemented. It's one thing to say a lot of good things, and we all want to advocate. And I hope the legislature now takes this very, very seriously, because there is a change going on in the world. But 25 to 26 years ago, when we started Proton, there was a thought at the time that the hydrogen economy was going to change the world. It was going to happen right away. It didn't. And it went into hibernation for about 15 years. But over the past few years, and I've been impressed at how this has happened, due to the lowering cost of renewable resources, wind and solar, you're seeing a fundamental economic change where the cost of green hydrogen, the cost of climate-friendly fuel source and chemical feedstock can become the most economic way to do it. And as you hit that critical point, as you hit that tipping point, that is starting to see, you're starting to see fundamental changes. I'm starting to see projects in the Middle East, for instance, where the oil economies are looking ahead to the next hydrogen economy and how they can use their solar resources there to generate feedstocks for something like green ammonia. Once you hit that tipping point and pass through it, you're seeing a fundamental shift in the world economy, this new order. And Connecticut is right at the central part of it, through, all the companies that have been mentioned here today. And it's exciting to be part of that. The legislature now has to realize that they're sitting in an environment here that can be basically the Silicon Valley of the hydrogen and fuel cell market. And I don't think a lot of people know that yet. The general public doesn't know it, and I don't even know how well the legislature knows it. So I really hope this report has the impact that it really can have. But I appreciate the opportunity to be part of the process. And I can see a very bright future for the state and this economy, and helping the whole world and really generations to follow to have a much brighter future.
Excellent. Thank you, William. We've got Shannon, Nikki, and then Julia on behalf of Chair Gillette. Shannon?
Yeah, thank you. So I was really glad to participate in this process for Conservation Law Foundation, and coming in as an advocate from an environmental group, my priorities were really a focus on deployment of clean hydrogen that also reduces emissions, primarily from hard to decarbonize end uses, as we've discussed in the working groups, and consistent with our state climate goals under the GWSA. And of course, we have to do this at the same time that we're decarbonizing the electric sector, which right now is still dependent on natural gas for about half of our electric generation in the region. So that really requires a huge increase in deployment of renewables and transmission to support that, which I feel like is a point that was sometimes a little bit lost in the process. I do appreciate the focus on equity and environmental justice, and providing meaningful opportunities for public comment. One other concern we had coming into this process is the potential for actually increasing emissions if hydrogen production is not really clean or zero emissions. And right now that seems like a real possibility, given that the vast majority of hydrogen production is made from fossil fuels and is not zero emissions. So, similarly, if we end up using hydrogen in sectors that can be otherwise decarbonized, namely by direct electrification, there's a real potential that we could just prop up our existing reliance on fossil fuels like natural gas, for example, in the building sector, and fail to reduce emissions. And I think there's still a lot of education that's needed for state policymakers. So looking forward to engaging further in processes at DEEP and other state level proceedings. As far as process, how this process played out, initially I had some real concerns about how it was going. It seemed like for the first meeting, there was very little public outreach, and a lot of interested stakeholders only heard about that first meeting after the fact. So I do really appreciate that both the Green Bank and Stratagen were really responsive to requests from the public for greater transparency, opportunities for public engagement. It was really helpful having the website and having information posted there, making the working group meetings available and open to the public, recording the meetings. So I think there was a huge improvement from an initially kind of rocky start, and really appreciate that that was prioritized once it was flagged as a stakeholder concern. And then lastly, for the report, Stratagen, I think, did a great job facilitating the working groups and the meetings and putting together this final work product. I do think that it is reasonably balanced and accurately reflects the process that we just went through. One clear takeaway, I think, is the need, as others have said, for further research and processes to really determine what hydrogen policies make sense in Connecticut. And there are obviously still a lot of moving pieces at the federal level and regional levels. For example, as the federal government is still figuring out how to implement the policies to support clean hydrogen, how we're going to define clean hydrogen, and what ends up happening with the Northeast Regional Hydrogen Hub proposal. So given the potentially enormous costs of investing in hydrogen production and infrastructure, as well as the climate costs that could result if we deploy hydrogen that's not zero emissions and does not actually reduce emissions. I do think it's really critical that moving forward that we establish appropriate frameworks for clean hydrogen that is consistent with our state climate goals and really prioritizes those end uses that are hard to decarbonize, as we've been discussing throughout this process. So if we can do that, which is a tall order in a responsible and an equitable way, but I do think there is good potential for clean hydrogen to help support our economic development and contribute to our climate goals. But I think there are a lot of potential risks that we'll need to be cognizant of and try to avoid those as we're developing these policies moving forward. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you for that comprehensive overview. Nikki.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I want to second comments made by other participants just to thank the Connecticut Green Bank and Strategen for including us on this task force and working with us through an intense schedule, as previously noted. And on behalf of my Eversource colleagues, we really appreciate the opportunity to contribute. I think, a lot of points have already been covered, so I won't keep harping on those, but, I'll take maybe the education component and kind of the customer or constituent outreach in a little bit of a different direction. It's going to be key. I mean, I think the demand, the market pull, if you will really be critical to making this work, in addition to other factors, certainly. But, we need to be offering our customers a multitude of ways to decarbonize, and educating them all along the way. And there's going to be a lot of innovation required along the way as well. And I think, from our perspective at Eversource, we want to be able to fail out things fast that don't work, but also keep options open so we can pivot. Because I think what we've identified here, obviously, is timing is of the essence. We can't wait. We have to pursue options so that we can decarbonize in a cost-effective, safe, and reliable manner. So, we support that. And with that, one other comment I would offer as I reflect back, on the experience is just a lot of folks here have various levels of experience with hydrogen, with emerging technologies, and it was really neat to be a part of that diversity of thought. And I urge all of us as leaders in this space and as leaders on the task force, and hopefully what's to come in the discussion as we continue on the clean energy journey, to be open-minded and think of ways that we all need to innovate. We have a lot of great skill sets, and we definitely need to change, whether that's perception, gaining new skills, engaging with folks differently, or working with each other differently. I think there's a lot of great foundation here. And if we're open-minded and willing to innovate, we can do a lot of great things together. I always thought that even in the working groups, as we had differing opinions or perspectives, it was so respectful. And when you really listened to where people were coming from and got to the bottom of it all, I think everyone has good intent. And so that's going to be key to move this forward, the collaboration and the open-mindedness. So I would just offer that as some of my closing remarks. Thank you again for the opportunity here, and really looking forward to 2023.
So good, Nikki. Thank you very much for that. Diversity of thought, a strength. I think we're learning a lot about that in equity and inclusion. Thank you for that. Great way to think about this. All right, Julia Dumaine on behalf of Chair Gillette of PURA.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone, and thank you again for the opportunity to provide some reflections here. So, just thinking back, PURA is no stranger to the challenges of coordinating many diverse stakeholder perspectives. And so I'd really like to commend the efforts of the Green Bank and Strategen for coordinating all these different strong opinions and positions that each of our parties have in, bettering our our state. I think this report is a really excellent example of Connecticut's tightly knit energy community and industry, and the power of thoughtful and methodical work and collaboration. We really appreciate the consideration of all these different perspectives, and particularly, considering how this new industry could impact Connecticut citizens, businesses, and ratepayers. it could not possibly, the timing of this task force could not possibly answer every question related to hydrogen, but I think that this has really positioned us very strongly to anticipate and welcome the hydrogen industry as it advances, and also puts us in a good position to prepare for future federal funding opportunities and such. So we really appreciate the opportunity to participate and provide feedback throughout this. And I also appreciated hearing everybody else's perspectives. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Julia. So I think that is everyone on the task force. If I missed anybody, let me know. We're tracking folks here. But why don't I see if our facilitator wants to say anything. Aaron, I don't know if having heard some of those reflections, you want to reflect as well on the process.
Thank you, Brian. I mean, first of all, I would just say I think we're all listening in and are extremely touched by all of the kind things that everyone has had to say about this process. I know this has been, I think Sam said, a sprint, and I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's participated. The engagement has been really wonderful, and I know that today we've been focusing specifically on legislatively appointed task force members, but you know, there's a number of other folks who have been showing up to make sure that we're doing good work, make sure that we're putting something comprehensive in front of the legislature, making sure that this report is really setting the foundation for where the state wants to go, and really doing a comprehensive job of capturing the opportunities in front of Connecticut. I think the other thing I wanted to say is that, you know, at Strategen, we are working with a couple of different, I'll call them hub-related convenings or hydrogen-related convenings. And I want to commend this particular process specifically for being very comprehensive in approaching, I think, some of the hardest questions that folks are facing as we think about building the hydrogen economy, specifically questions around how are we thinking about and prioritizing hydrogen end uses, and a lot of the questions that come out of that. How are we thinking about hydrogen sources and their impacts on sort of the climate integrity of the hydrogen that we're producing? And last but definitely not least is how are we thinking about this as an opportunity to facilitate a just and equitable transition? And I want to thank the Green Bank team especially for pushing us on all three of these fronts, but the stakeholders as well for really helping to bring such a diversity of perspectives that I think helped to make this report really come together. I think the last thing I'll note is we're also working with folks who are, you know, doing active development of very large hydrogen projects. And even the folks who've just gotten $500 million from the DOE say they feel like they're at halftime, right? They don't feel like their work is done. They know that they have so much ahead of them. And I know so many of the comments today are just reflecting on how much progress we've made just in these 6 months, but also the progress that still is yet to come. And so I just want to second that, but also, you know, I guess provide a little glimpse for folks that there are folks who've made it over this hump that we're talking about today and are still excited to be continuing to invest in the hydrogen opportunity, continuing to think about how hydrogen is a toolkit for decarbonization across our country and across the world. So it's been such an honor and a pleasure to be a part of this process and to be working with you all. And we're so excited to be sending this report out. So thank you, Brian and Sarah.
All right, Aaron, thank you for that. Task force members, thank you for all of that. So we'd like to see if there's a motion to approve the resolution for the document provided, and then we'll open it for comment and then vote if that works for folks. So let me just put it out there as a motion to approve the resolution as provided.
Kira puts forth a motion to approve.
Great, thank you, Julia. Is there a second?
Sure, second.
Who was that? Was that Tony?
Bill Smith?
Bill? Great, thank you. All right, questions, comments, discussion?
Hey, this is Sant from Luftcar. Can I have a word?
Hold your thought if you could. We're going to go into public comment in just 1 second.
Oh,
If you
okay. I
could.
just thought the public.
Perfect.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, no, hold it. Yeah, thank you.
Can you go back up a slide, please?
There you go. Great. Okay, so we've got a first by Julia, a second from Bill. Okay, so all in favor of the resolution as provided, say yay.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? All right. All right. Well, so thank you very much. We still have a few things to get done here. Aaron and the team are going to make it all pretty and do all that great stuff. And then we will be submitting it on Sunday. And, you know, I think what I took from those comments is yet to come, right? I think that's the view we all have to have. I'll leave my final comments for after public comments, but why don't we move into a public comment period? Actually, I see Shannon's hand.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question. I was wondering, now that the final report, sorry, I accidentally muted myself. Now that the final report has been approved, I was wondering, is that going to be posted publicly on the website? And if so, is that happening like after this meeting, or would that happen after it's actually transmitted to the legislature on Sunday?
I think what we'll do, Shannon, is we'll post the meeting materials for today onto the website. So I think we have the red line and the clean version. We'll post those as meeting materials, but the actual report that's going to have all whatever look nice that cover stuff, Stratagen will be working on over the next couple of days. I don't know, Aaron, if there's anything you want to provide there.
I'd just add, I think we're expecting to have a final formatted document for Green Bank and the rest of the task force as of Friday. And so, you know, Brian et al., whatever your process is after that, I think will be probably when we can see this go live for everyone.
I mean, it will definitely go live on the 15th on Sunday when we transmit to the ENT. So it'll be done like Monday at the latest, Shannon?
Okay, that makes sense. And I know Monday is Martin Luther King Day, so also we'll be sure about that. But will you notify the task force members when when the final product has been posted and is available for the public?
Yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll forward that transmission to the ENT to the task force members, so you can see it.
Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, public comment. I think, okay, we see a hand raised. Actually, let me see. There was a gentleman earlier who had a comment. Did you want to raise your hand?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to hand raise feature here. I'm just calling my phone, so I'll just talk about it. This is Sant from Luftcar. So I'm commenting on the presentation that was shared in the last task force meeting, and I didn't get a chance to write about it earlier. So this is about hydrogen in aviation, and I saw some statistic in there saying aviation would come about in 2050. I just want to respectfully disagree with that, but I think that that particular comment comes from the DOE analysis, and maybe Stratagen verified it somehow. But what I am seeing here, being in the hydrogen and aviation space, is there are plenty of companies that are already working on it. There are a lot of eVTOL companies that are slowly shifting their focus towards hydrogen from batteries. So I don't think 2050 it's going to take 2050 to get there. My prediction is that by 2030, we will have quite a few platforms out there flying with hydrogen, either as a direct combustion or as a fuel cell. We are going to be a fuel cell powered vehicle, and we have a big We have a big role to play in Connecticut. We have done a lot of studies during the course of preparing for the Hydrogen Hub project. So we have written quite a few sort of like white papers around this. So my recommendation is that not necessarily tie 2050 to hydrogen aviation, because that, as we are representing part of Connecticut in the Hydrogen Hub, we don't want the 2050 date to work against us as we go through the Hydrogen Hub application. So just want to make a mention about that. And I would also like to work with Lydia on the white paper that she's working on. We'll try to give some of our inputs and be helpful there. Thanks.
Great, thank you for that comment. Any other comments? All right, well let me just say one final comment, and I think where this I didn't think I was going to say this, but I think this is coming from a place of a big thank you to all of you. So, technology, innovation, and diffusion is very, very important when we think about confronting climate change. And I think what we've learned a lot through this process is we need to do the work, we need to understand the risks. In the context of economies, we've kind of shared some of our space with this task force over time, the Bernard Baker room, the Marian Eliza Freeman room, which is where we are today. One of the other rooms is Colonel Albert Pope. And I just want to tell that story because I think it's very indicative of the moment we're in. Albert Pope was an entrepreneur who owned bicycle patents. He manufactured the Columbia bicycle here in Hartford, Connecticut. In fact, the OPM building, the Office of Policy and Management building, and a lot of the manufacturing facilities on that street were Columbia bicycles, but also he used his wealth to manufacture the first 500 electric vehicles in the late 1800s. So we literally employed thousands of people in Hartford, Connecticut in the electric vehicle industry. The Victoria Phaeton went 30 miles on a charge. You think about the Chevy Volt today, back then we had an electric vehicle that went 30 miles on a charge. There's literally a picture, and I had an opportunity last night of being with Teddy Roosevelt III, of his grandfather riding in an electric vehicle presidential motorcade in downtown Hartford in August of 1902. So probably the first, we saw Biden in the Ford Lightning, last year, but probably the first and only presidential motorcade was in an electric vehicle in 1902, manufactured in Hartford. And I say that because in the picture, when you look at the picture, you see horses, you see bicycles, you see people walking, and an electric vehicle carrying the president, and a lot of people sitting on the side of the streets staring at all of this. We, I think, as government, industry, and academia need to enable more people to be a part of this economy. The notion of just transition, environmental justice, lifting up everybody in this economy we're trying to build is what I see in that photo. Because if we could have provided those people who are cheering with the capital they need to buy one of those vehicles, maybe the course of history would have changed. Henry Ford visited Colonel Pope in those days. We had a manufacturing, interchangeable parts, high precision manufacturing going on here in this state, production lines. And Pope liked Ford. He just didn't like the fact that Ford was an internal combustion engine believer. So I say that with this moment we're in now with hydrogen and fuel cells. Like this is Connecticut's moment, right? This is our industry. And I feel like 50 years from now, people may look back and find this video of all of you and see all of the work that would have been done from now in a yet to come moment that we would have clearly put our marker down on building this industry for not only Connecticut, not only for our country, but for the world. Still a lot to get to, but just a big thank you and a hug from all of us at the Green Bank to all of you for putting in the time and energy into this process. So thank you all again. Yet to come is the takeaway for today. And might I put out a motion to adjourn today's final task force meeting? Anyone move the motion to adjourn?
I can do it.
Perfect. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, Lydia. All right. Well, why don't we adjourn? Thank you all again for all the work, and have a great week ahead. And again, thank you for the process. Take care, all.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Brian.
Thank you.
Strategy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.